Suppose I spend 100 hours making the finest mud pie humanity has ever seen. I sculpt it, polish it, name it, and perhaps give it a tiny hat. Does 100 hours of labor make it enormously valuable? No. It mostly proves that somebody should have checked on me around hour 12. Welcome to democratic economy, where we follow the structure of the system to identify the underlying mechanisms of inequality. Labor value does not mean every hour of activity automatically creates equivalent value. It refers to socially necessary labor time. There are two important parts to that phrase. Labor time means production requires human activity. Socially necessary means the value is not determined by one person's private level of speed, skill, or stubbornness. It is centered on the normal amount of labor society requires to reproduce the commodity. The mud pie fails because there is no meaningful demand for the supply. It lacks the use value necessary to function as a commodity. Now consider two people making identical tables. One uses modern tools and finishes in 7 hours. The other insists on using hand tools and finishes in 70. The second table does not become 10 times more valuable. If comparable tables are normally produced in about 7 hours, the socially necessary labor time remains near 7 hours. Individual labor matters only through its relationship to the social conditions of production. This framework also addresses the famous comparison between water and diamonds. Water has an enormous use value. Diamonds have a much smaller practical use for most people, yet diamonds usually command a higher price. The explanation is not that diamonds contain a magical property called expensive. Under ordinary conditions, usable water is far easier to acquire than diamonds. The social labor required to provide the available supply of diamonds is much greater. Now, change the conditions. Put both in a region where clean water is extremely difficult to locate, purify, and transport. Its labor value rises because the social average of labor needed to bring water as a commodity to the market has increased. Its use value also gives sellers greater power because people cannot survive without it. Those are two different forces, and we should not confuse them. The first changes the productive center of price. The second can pull price above that center. Suppose a storm destroys a bridge used to deliver food. Transportation now requires a longer route, more fuel, and more labor. Part of the higher price reflects increased socially necessary labor. But if a merchant uses the emergency to triple the price, even though costs rose only slightly, the additional separation is supported by desperate use value. One change reflects production, the other reflects leverage. Socially necessary labor time also explains lucky discoveries. If one person finds a diamond while walking home, that individual performed very little labor. But society cannot reproduce the diamond supply by telling everyone to get lucky. The market value is centered on the average labor required to search, mine, process, and deliver diamonds. One lucky individual can capture that established value, but the lucky event does not determine the social labor needed to reproduce the supply. Productivity changes this center. If a new machine allows the same number of workers to produce twice as many tables in the same time, the socially necessary labor represented in each table falls once that technique becomes normal. An early adopter may temporarily sell at the old price and earn an unusually large profit. But competitors have a powerful reason to copy the new method. As the method spreads, the socially necessary labor time falls throughout the industry. Labor value pulls price toward the new center. This is why labor value behaves like gravity rather than a price tag permanently glued to an object. The center can move when social production changes. Price can orbit above or below it. Use value can lift a price. Competition can pull it back. Scarcity can reflect real labor requirements, artificial restriction, or some combination of both. The task is to separate those causes. To do that across very different kinds of work, we need a way to compare labor that does not pretend every task is identical. A surgeon, a landscaper, a machinist, and a sanitation worker all perform different activities. The process that makes those different forms of labor quantitatively comparable is abstract labor. That is our next subject.